90 million years ago, somewhere above the Arctic Circle, a shape moves through the dark. Not through blowing white snow and howling wind exactly like today's tundra, but close enough that its breath would have fogged in front of it. Close enough that for 3 brutal months, the sun simply never rose. This was not a frozen wasteland at the edge of the world. This was home to some of the toughest animals that ever lived. Animals most people still picture wading through steaming tropical swamps. And yet, here they were, hundreds of miles inside the polar circle, somehow making it through winters that should have killed them outright. The question that has haunted paleontologists for decades is deceptively simple. How did dinosaurs survive deadly winters? And the answer is stranger and far more remarkable than anyone expected. To understand how bizarre this really is, we first have to understand the world these animals were living in. During the Cretaceous period, Earth was, overall, a hothouse. There were no ice caps at the poles. Crocodiles swam in Arctic seas, but heat doesn't erase geography. And even on a warmer Earth, the poles still tilted away from the sun for months at a time. In northern Alaska's Prince Creek Formation, scientists have used fossil soils and ancient plant remains to reconstruct a startling picture of the deep past. Mean annual temperatures were around 6.3 degrees Celsius, compared to roughly -12 today. This was dramatically warmer than the modern Arctic, but nowhere near tropical. And warmth wasn't the only problem. Fossilized plant evidence suggests the late Cretaceous Alaskan winter lasted about 3 months, with average winter lows dipping to around -11 degrees Celsius. That's a temperature that, by all conventional logic, no reptile should be able to survive. Because this wasn't just about cold, it was about darkness. Real, absolute, months-long darkness. Polar dinosaurs endured prolonged periods without sunlight, up to 6 months of the year. Imagine that. Not a long night. A long winter where the moon is the brightest thing in the sky, week after week, for half a year. No warmth from the sun to wake up to. No easy way to find food in a forest gone dark and quiet. And yet the fossil record insists, again and again, that dinosaurs weren't just passing through this nightmare landscape. They were living there, raising young there, dying there of old age, not exposure. Could any dinosaur survive that? Scientists now think they know the answer. The first big reveal came from Alaska itself, from a place called the Prince Creek Formation. In 1961, a geologist stumbled across enormous fossilized bones buried in river sediment. It would take decades to understand what he'd actually found. It was an entire lost ecosystem of dinosaurs that never left the Arctic, not even when the sun disappeared. Then scientists noticed something impossible. Their bones told an unexpected story. Young dinosaurs grew incredibly fast. Then, almost suddenly, growth slowed. Winter had left its signature inside the skeleton, essentially hardwiring their bodies to survive on less during the punishing winter months, then catching up again once summer's abundance returned. In other words, these animals weren't just tough, they were built to endure this climate. But that raises an even bigger mystery. Why didn't these animals simply migrate? One prominent theory holds that dinosaurs may have migrated toward warmer regions to escape the worst of the winter, much like modern animals do. But there's no direct fossil evidence of dinosaur migration, and the theory falls apart for many polar species entirely. Heavily armored ankylosaurs, built low and squat with thick plating, were in no shape for a marathon trek across a changing continent. And even Alaska's giant duck-billed hadrosaur, Ugru-na-Luk, an animal fully capable of walking enormous distances, left behind something the migration theory can't easily explain. Scientists found a fossil bed dominated overwhelmingly by juveniles, animals almost certainly too young and too small to make that journey at all. Which means, for at least some of these creatures, there was no escape south. Winter simply had to be faced head-on, in the dark. This is where the story turns from survival strategy into something almost eerie. Roughly 6,000 miles away, on the opposite side of the vanished supercontinent, a very different kind of dinosaur was solving the same impossible problem. In what is now Victoria, Australia, a landscape that, in the Cretaceous, sat well inside the Antarctic Circle, paleontologists uncovered the remains of a small, ear-sized herbivore named Lealinasaura. Depending on the exact latitude, the sun may not have risen for weeks or even months at a time, forcing this little dinosaur to live in near total darkness for a significant stretch of every year. And when scientists examined a fragment of its skull, they found something extraordinary. It had unusually large eyes, likely adapted to help it navigate and forage through long stretches of twilight and darkness. A dinosaur, evolving eyes built for the night. Some researchers have gone even further, suggesting proportionally enlarged optic lobes in the brain itself. This animal had a nervous system fine-tuned for a world with almost no light at all. Not every detail holds up under closer scrutiny. Some later analysis suggests those oversized eye sockets might simply reflect a juvenile skeleton, rather than a permanent nocturnal adaptation. But even the skepticism reveals something remarkable. This was an animal so specialized for darkness that scientists are still arguing over exactly how far that specialization went. What isn't in dispute is where Dinosaura and its relatives spent their winters. Throughout the dark months, they appear to have sheltered deep within the protective cover of dense forest, only emerging once spring brought fresh growth back to the landscape. But sheltering in a forest wasn't the only trick some dinosaurs had up their sleeve. In Montana, researchers uncovered something that shouldn't exist at all. They found a fossilized burrow over 2 meters long, curling in an S-bend beneath the ancient floodplain. Packed into its final chamber were the remains of an adult dinosaur and 2 juveniles. All 3 were preserved exactly where they had died. Its name, Oryctodromeus cubicularis, literally translates to digging runner of the lair. This was a dinosaur that dug its own den, shaped a shovel-like snout for excavation, braced its hips for the labor of tunneling, and then used that hard-won shelter to raise its young in total safety, tucked below the frozen surface world entirely. Scientists studying the discovery have pointed out something chilling. This kind of burrowing behavior might have been exactly what let certain dinosaurs survive brutal seasonal extremes, disappearing underground the way modern foxes and puffins still do today. Somewhere, in the freezing dark of a Cretaceous winter, there were dinosaurs sleeping soundly beneath the ground, completely invisible to a world falling apart above them. And that's the detail that quietly unravels everything we thought we knew about these animals. Cold-blooded creatures don't do this. They can't. A modern reptile, dropped into a 3-month Arctic winter, would simply shut down and die. In nature, most animals capable of thriving in polar conditions are warm-blooded, and the rare, cold-blooded exceptions survive only through extreme behavioral tricks like brumation, the reptilian equivalent of hibernation. The presence of dinosaurs of every size, thriving at these brutal latitudes, is some of the strongest circumstantial evidence scientists have that at least many dinosaurs were warm-blooded, generating their own internal heat the way birds and mammals do today. For over a century, dinosaurs were dismissed as giant reptiles, too primitive to survive the cold. Today, the fossil record tells a very different story. These weren't fragile animals waiting for extinction. They were among the most adaptable creatures to have ever lived. It's a jaw-dropping possibility. These weren't sluggish reptiles hiding from a season they couldn't handle. They were active, engine-running animals, walking through snow in the dark, by choice, because their bodies gave them no other option but to keep moving. Which brings us to the deepest irony buried in this whole story. The very adaptations that let dinosaurs conquer the harshest environments on Earth were forged, quite literally, by catastrophe. Long before the more famous extinction event, a chain of massive volcanic eruptions at the end of the Triassic period plunged the planet into a sudden cooling crisis, wiping out more than 3/4 of all species on land and sea. Unfeathered, poorly insulated giants collapsed under temperatures that reached even the tropics. But the dinosaurs, already carrying cold-tolerant traits, smaller frames, faster metabolisms, maybe early feathers for warmth, walked straight through that graveyard and inherited the world. And that's what makes this so devastating. The same paleontologists who study these polar survivors are divided on something chilling: whether the resilience that carried dinosaurs through ancient volcanic winters could have carried them through the asteroid impact that finally ended their reign 66 million years later. Some argue the dark and cold-adapted animals in Alaska proved dinosaurs could shrug off exactly this kind of catastrophe, while others insist the very existence of polar dinosaurs shows just how long and severe that final impact winter would have needed to be to finish off animals already built to endure the dark. Either way, the picture that emerges is almost poetic. These were not fragile creatures wiped out by the first sign of hardship. They were seasoned survivors of darkness, of cold, of famine stretched across months at a time. Animals that had already survived ancient catastrophes. It would take something almost unimaginably catastrophic to finally end what 150 million years of winters could not. So the next time you picture a dinosaur, don't imagine steam rising off a swamp. Imagine snow falling silently through a forest with no sunrise in sight, and something enormous moving quietly through the dark, exactly where it belongs. Maybe the most remarkable thing about dinosaurs isn't how they disappeared. It's that they ever managed to thrive in a world like this at all.